Everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So we will continue our discussion on history. We have reached up to 1924, right? So we have started from 1757 Battle of Plassey, and in the first session we have talked about 1757 to 1857. Then in the second part we have discussed about 1857 to 1885 up to Congress formation. Then we have divided like this: 1885 to 1905 up to partition of Bengal we have discussed, and then we have discussed from 1905 to 1921, and in this phase we have discussed about partition of Bengal, Swadeshi movement, Surat split, militant nationalism, phase 1, that was in 1908 to 1911, and then we have discussed about World War I, okay, and we have discussed about Khadar Party, Kamagata Maru incident, Continuous Passage Act, Defense of India Act. We also talked about release of Tilak from jail and reunification of Congress in Lucknow session. We have discussed about Lucknow Pact, 1919 Government of India Act, and I've told you Congress was not satisfied with that 1919 Government of India Act and rejected or did not contested or participated in the election in 1919, and 1924 the next election was due, so there was a debate between Swarajists and no changers whether to contest election or not. That also we have done. In between we have talked about Rowlatt Act, okay, and connected incidences like Jallianwala Bagh massacre and Hundar Commission, which was appointed for enquiry into the charges of police excess during Jallianwala Bagh, we have discussed, and all these culminated into non-cooperation movement in 1921, and non-cooperation movement was called off by Gandhi because of Chauri Chaura incident. All those things have covered, and younger workers or members of Congress was like Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose were unhappy with that. Okay, in between we have discussed that Sachin Sanyal started HRA because they were unhappy with Congress leadership and their methods and strategies. Especially they are not happy with calling off of partition of calling off of non-cooperation movement. Okay. So then we have seen HRA was regrouped into HSRA, and they have adopted socialism as their main goal. And we have seen a wider perspective of freedom. There was an ideological rethinking in militant nationalism during 1920s, which was reflected in the ideas of Bhagat Singh. And in fact, I have given you that as a question, and we have spent a lot of time in discussing what was that ideological rethinking, right? It is all about, true freedom. It is actually inspired from Russian Revolution. Merely overthrowing of British will give you political freedom, and that's actually what the demand of Congress. And till now, even militant nationalist was also trying to overthrow British, but that alone will not be enough. That won't give you true freedom. True freedom means when all the kinds of exploitation of man by man should end. Okay, that means you need economic equality and you need social freedom. So true freedom comprises of political freedom, social freedom, and economic freedom. And for that you need large-scale land reforms and all those things we have discussed. So that's the ideological rethinking among militant nationalists during 1920s, which was reflected in the ideas of Bhagat Singh. We have discussed about Kakori train robbery, which was a major setback for HRA, and we have also talked about Surya Sen. We have discussed about Chittagong Armory raid, and all those things is what we have covered so far. Now here in this session I will be talking about Nehru report, which is very important from both prelims as well as mains point of view, and along with Nehru report we'll briefly mention about Simon Commission, and we will talk about Delhi proposals by Jinnah and Hindu Mahasabha demands also we will see. So this is what the agenda of today's session. So if you remember, I've told you already, 1927 Simon Commission came for discussion related to future devolution of power. It was a 7-member committee by the from the British cabinet, but the problem was there was no Indian representatives, and Congress actually rejected Simon Commission because of no representation from Indian side. Okay, and there was anti-Simon Commission protest, and in that the British SP Saunders went for a lathi charge, in that Lala Lajpat Rai got killed, and Bhagat Singh took revenge upon that, and all those things we have already covered, so I'm not getting into that details of Simon Commission and anti-Simon Commission protest, since we have covered as part of when we discussed about militant nationalism in North India or as part of HRA. So here now, when Simon Commission was rejected by Congress, now British government told the Congress that you come up with a formula for devolution of power but there is a condition that formula should be acceptable to all sections of Indians. So when I'm talking about all sections of Indians, now Congress can come up with a devolution formula, but it has to be acceptable for Muslim League and also to be Hindu Mahasabha and also princely states. But the problem here is, if it is acceptable to Muslim League, it may not be acceptable to Hindu Mahasabha, and if it is acceptable to Hindu Mahasabha, it may not be acceptable to Muslim League. And in case if it is acceptable to both of them, princely state may not agree with that. So British government clearly know about this, so they know that it is impossible that the Congress can come up with a devolution formula which is acceptable to all. So they challenged the Congress to come up with a devolution formula, and Congress accepted this challenge and they appointed the committee under Motilal Nehru, and that's what Nehru report. Now before we get into Nehru report, we will have to talk about Jinnah's 4 proposals, or which is known as Delhi proposals. Actually, Muslim League now thought that there is a possibility of, joint demand along with Congress to the British. So Muslim League is now ready to offer a joint demand along with Congress. Okay, and now in Delhi proposals, Muslim League accepted, or Muslim League is of the opinion that they are ready to accept the Congress position on separate electorate if the other demands of Muslim League is met. See, for a long time, Congress is actually not in favor of separate electorate. If you remember, when we discussed about Lucknow Pact, I have made it clear that Lucknow Pact, it was between Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Tilak Jinnah Pact. In that, Muslim League and Congress have decided to take joint anti-imperialist stand against British. But in that, Congress have made a promise that Congress will accept the Muslim League's position on separate electorate. Here now, Muslim League is ready to accept the Congress position on separate electorate. If you remember, that time itself I have told you Congress is not in favor of separate electorate. It's not the case that Congress is accepting separate electorate, right? Because just because Muslim League demanding separate electorate, Congress is accepting the demand of Muslim League. So Congress is supporting or accepting the Muslim League's position on separate electorate. It is not that Congress is in support of separate electorate. Congress always talking about joint electorate with reservation for Muslims, but Muslim League needs separate electorate. What is the difference? I have already told you, separate electorate means only Muslims will contest and only Muslims will vote. Okay, so Muslim League is in demand of separate electorate, so Congress is accepting that. Otherwise, Congress is obviously in demand of joint electorate with reservation. Now Muslim League is ready to go for joint electorate with reservation, or Muslim League is now ready to take the stand of Congress, or Muslim League is now ready to accept Congress position on separate electorate, but Muslim League is having certain other demands. The 4 demands is what we need to discuss here, and I'll discuss that in detail. I'll tell you the logic behind all these 4, and then we'll write down, and then we will move on to Hindu Mahasabha demands also. Okay. The first demand of Muslim League is actually there should be 1/3 reservation for Muslims in the central provinces. So 1/3 reservation for Muslims in the central provinces. So the first demand is 1/3 reservation for Muslims in the central provinces. Okay. Now the second demand is actually, you may think that it is illogical, but I'll explain the logic behind this, then it will be convincing, I hope. See, Muslim League is now demanding that they need reservation. Here already they are demanding reservation, but they are demanding reservation even in Muslim majority areas also. So they need reservation even in Muslim majority areas. See, what is the logic behind this? If you see, in case of separate electorate, only Muslims contesting and only Muslims vote, so they will get the seat. Okay, but here when you are going for joint electorate and you are going for reservation, that's what we have discussed in the first point. But in case if a Muslim majority area, you may believe that majority are Muslims, and then if a Muslim is contesting, Muslim will win. But that may not be the case. Okay, a Hindu who's contesting election, despite the fact that Hindus are in minority, he is having more scope to win in that seat. Okay, I'll explain the logic here. Suppose one Hindu and a Muslim is contesting election. Okay, so Hindu and Muslim is contesting election. Muslims here are in majority, so common sensically Muslim will win. But understand at that time the election is not based on adult suffrage. Not everybody is having the right to vote. Only few people have the right to vote. It was based on limited suffrage. So even though Muslims are in majority, the Muslim voters are actually in minority. Muslim voters, if you take the numbers, are actually less than Hindu voters. Even though Hindus are in minority, Hindu voters are in majority compared to Muslim voters. So Hindu voters will vote for this Hindu. They are in majority compared to Muslim voters. So who will win? Obviously Hindu candidate will get more vote, and he will win even in Muslim majority area also. And that is the reason why Muslim League demanded, reservation in Muslim majority area. So let me write down that point. Muslims must be granted reservation in areas they are in majority also. So it may seems to be irrational and illogical, but I hope with this explanation it is clear that what is the logic behind this. See, Jinnah was one of the most intelligent person. Okay, so don't forget that fact. So the third point is related to creation of new provinces. The first one that they are demanding is, separate Sindh from Bombay. And secondly, separation of Northwest Frontier Province, NWFP, from Punjab. So separate Sindh from Bombay, separate NWFP from Punjab, because then it will be a Muslim majority area. It will become a Muslim majority area. So Muslims will get the advantage. So creation of new provinces is the third demand of Jinnah, or the third demand under the Delhi proposal. So creation of new provinces, that means separation of Sindh from Bombay and separation of NWFP from Punjab. Okay, so this is their third demand. Fourth one, actually residuary powers to be given to the provinces. Okay, so residuary powers to be given to provinces. Now, as per constitution, you already know that it was with the center. It is actually with the center. So these are the four proposals. So first thing that you need to remember is Muslim League is now ready to accept the Congress position on separate electorate. Okay, what is the Congress position on separate electorate? Congress is not in favor of separate electorate. Even though Congress accepted separate electorate, it is not accepting separate electorate in Lucknow Pact. It was Congress accepted Muslim League's position on separate electorate. That means Muslim League demands separate electorate, so we are ready to do that. We are ready to accept it. Otherwise, Congress is in favor of or in demand of joint electorate with reservation. Now, Muslim League is now ready to take Congress position on separate electorate, provided the four conditions are to be met. So the first one, 1/3 reservations for Muslims in Central Province. Secondly, Muslims must be granted reservation even in the areas where they are in majority also. Thirdly, creation of new provinces like separation of Sindh from Bombay and NWFP from Punjab. And fourth one, residuary powers to be with the state or the provinces. Okay, so what do you think? Congress will accept it or not? Congress will never go for too much of flexibility. If you're accepting it, too much of flexibility, except especially the second point, that the Muslims must be granted reservation in areas where they are in majority also, and separation of provinces. Congress is not ready to accept that. So if Congress is not ready to accept that, what the Muslim League will do? Muslim League will go back to their stand on separate electorate. So now they won't accept the joint electorate. Okay, so obviously the talks will break down, and British government, what they said in the beginning, it has to be acceptable to all. It won't be acceptable to Muslim League means that report will be rejected. We'll come to that. Okay, so these are the 4 points under Delhi proposals or Jinnah's proposal. So I hope this is clear for all of you. Next, we will go for Hindu Mahasabha demands. It will be exactly opposite of Muslim League. So Hindu Mahasabha demands. Okay, see the first one that they are demanding is, if Hindus are in minority, you should give reservation to Hindus. So in those areas where Hindus are in minority, you should give reservation. It is again contrary to Muslim League's argument, right? Hindus are in minority means Muslims are in majority. So what the Muslim League is demanding, even though Muslims are in majority, the Muslim voters are in minority, so you should be giving reservation to Muslims even in Muslim majority area also. But this one is contradictory to that. Okay, contrary to that. So the first point, Hindus must be given reservation in areas where they are in minority. Okay, second point is there should not be any creation of new provinces. So separation of Sindh from Bombay and NWFP from Punjab, it should not be accepted. Okay, so no creation of new provinces of Sindh and NWFP. See, I hope you understood what is the advantage for Muslim League if they are creating a separate province, right? Separate province means separate provincial legislative council will be there, and here in these two areas Muslims are in majority, so they can come to power, and that's why they are demanding separation of these two provinces or creation of new provinces. Third one, related to residuary power, that is Muslim League is talking about it should be with the provinces, and Hindu Mahasabha is saying it should be with the center. So residuary power to the center. So you can see four demands of Muslim League, exactly opposite arguments as what actually Hindu Mahasabha demands. Okay, now after understanding this Delhi proposals and Hindu Mahasabha demands, let's now look into Nehru report, which is very, very important. Okay, Hindu Mahasabha demands is not that significant. Muslim League demand, that is the Delhi proposals, is important, and Motilal Nehru report is also equally important. Okay, so Nehru report. The first point is about dominion status. So dominion status means now India should be considered as similar to English colonies like Australia, New Zealand, etc. Okay, white colonies. So mainly more powers is given, more devolution of power, except in under British only. In foreign relations, defense, etc. they will work under British, but more devolution of power like white colonies. Okay, so dominion status on the lines of white British colonies like Australia and New Zealand. That means no complete independence, but younger generation of Congress like Subhash Chandra Bose and Jawaharlal Nehru were actually against this demand. Okay, so the second one, federal structure. Federal structure, basically to reassure the princely states the federal link between British administered territories and princely states ruled by Indian rulers. Okay, third point, again very important, secularism should be one of the most important feature. So secularism would be a feature of state policy. Fourth point is very important. It is related to fundamental rights. So 19 fundamental rights. So it is in the Nehru report for the first time fundamental rights actually introduced. In that context, it is very important. First time they're actually talking about fundamental rights under Nehru report. Okay, so introduction of fundamental right, and in that, you know, right to education from the age of 6 to 14, and it was a recommendation in Nehru report which was in 1928, and it became a fundamental right in 2002 through a constitutional amendment bill. Okay, not even in 1950. Okay, it was in 2002. Which amendment? 86th constitutional amendment. Which article? 21. A, 86th constitutional amendment. Okay, so this is the fourth point. Fifth one, related to electorate. So Congress position on electorate, that is joint electorate with reservation for minorities. So joint electorate with reservation for minorities. That means this is against Muslim League demand. Whether it is in support of Hindu Mahasabha demand or not is not significant, but it was actually against Muslim League demand. Second one, next is also related to Muslim League demand, against Muslim League demand. That means there should not be any creation of new provinces like Sindh and NWFP. Rejected the demand for new provinces Sindh and NWFP. And next is also against Muslim League position that residuary power with center. So if you see the last three, all these are against Muslim League demands. In fact, we don't want to talk whether it is in support of Hindu Mahasabha or not, because that's not that significant, but in fact it was in support of Hindu Mahasabha. Okay, next one. The fourth demand of Muslim League, that was they are in demand of reservation even in Muslim majority area. That is also rejected. Okay, so rejected Muslim League demand for reservation in Muslim majority areas. Okay, so we will go for a quick recap of this. Dominion status similar to the white British colonies. That means under the British you will work, but more devolution of power. Okay, and then federal structure, basically to reassure the princely state that the federal link between British India and the princely states. If you remember, after 1857 revolt, there was a Queen's proclamation. Under that, the Queen promised that there won't be any further annexation, and in fact it was a gentlewoman promise. There was no such annexations after that. And if you remember 1877 Delhi Darbar, I've discussed that the princely state rulers tried to appease the Queen Victoria, who came to India, despite the fact that the millions of Indians are suffering due to famine at that time, but huge amount of public money was spent to welcome Queen Victoria, to appease the Queen so that she won't go for further annexation. And they never went for further annexation, and 1/3 of India remained independent, or remained as princely state. In fact, that became a problem after independence. We were working very hardly to unite them into the country. Okay, so next is secularism would be a feature of state policy. Then fundamental rights was introduced. Now next 4 points are actually against the Muslim League. Okay, so except the first one, joint electorate with reservation for minorities. Yes, they have given reservation for minorities, and that is one of the demand. This rejected the Muslim League demand for new provinces. Okay, then residuary power, Muslim League demanding it should be with the province, but here it is center. Rejected Muslim League demand for reservation for Muslims in Muslim majority areas also. So these are the points which you need to keep in mind. These are important points. Otherwise, some other points you may see, but not that relevant. But from exam point of view, whether it is mains or prelims, from here you will get the question. So I hope you understood it clearly. Now you will clearly know the outcome of this report, right? It is against Muslim League demands. It is against Delhi proposals. So do you think Muslim League will support it? No. So they went back to their previous stand on separate electorate. So they are in need of separate electorate now. And that means the talks break down. So British government announced that this is not going to be possible, because you are not coming up with, you are asked to come up with a report which is applicable to all sections of Indians. So they were very clear that it is impossible for Congress to come with that. Okay, and since Muslim League rejected it, the British government also rejected Nehru report. And then Congress actually gave 1 year time to look into this report. And in 1929, I've told you already this one, 1929, Congress under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, when he became the president, demanded Purna Swaraj, or complete freedom. And in 1930, Jan 26 to be celebrated as Indian Independence Day. Okay, now what is the significance of Nehru report? So let me write down 2 points here. Significance of Nehru report. Firstly, it is actually the first attempt by Indians for a devolution of power formula. So this was the first attempt by Indians to draft a framework for devolution of power to India. So this was actually the first attempt by the Indians with respect to devolution of power. Okay, we have seen different acts, 1909 Council Act, 1919 Government of India Act, and all those things are related to devolution of power, but not up to the demand or expectations of Congress. And this was the first attempt by the Indians. Even when we discussed about Simon Commission, there was no representation from Indian, and that actually angered and annoyed the Congress leaders. Next one, the Deliberation on Federalism. You can see this is a feature of Indian Constitution now. Secularism and the need to recognize fundamental rights begun with this report, and these ideas are enshrined in Indian Constitution as well. Okay, so these ideas are there in Indian Constitution: the federalism, secularism, and the concept of fundamental right. It was in 1928, and after this Congress gave 1 year deadline, and in 1929 Congress under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru passed Purna Swaraj resolution. In which session? Lahore session of Congress. Okay, so Lahore session of Congress. So Simon Commission rejected by Congress. Motilal Nehru was appointed as a president for further devolution of formula to prepare, and it was not acceptable to Muslim League, so it was actually rejected by British government. Okay, now Gandhi will come up with his 11 demands. So next we will be talking about Gandhi's 11 demands. Okay, so this 11 demands is very important. From different areas the demands will come, and then after that Gandhi will go for civil disobedience movement, and then we will have 3 roundtable conferences. So this is what actually we are going to discuss in the next session. I'll talk about this 11 demands, and then we'll talk about Dandi March or civil disobedience movement, and we will complete it with roundtable conferences. If you have any doubt in any of the discussions, you can get in touch with me here. Okay, this is my Instagram ID. You can join this Telegram channel for all my videos. All economy history videos are there. I've shared all the videos over there. Okay, so see you guys. Everyone.